right. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in to this month's GovChats webinar. My name is Yen Tang. I am with the Georgia Technology Authority in the Office of Digital Services and Solutions, and GovChats is our monthly webinar series where we hold conversations, share ideas, and talk about common challenges and the work that we're doing. So usually we invite another state, but this month we're going to just keep it in the house, keep it in the family, because we have a super important topic that we want to focus on, and that's digital accessibility and complying with the new clarifications that were issued by the Department of Justice earlier this year. So before I introduce our speakers, I just have a few housekeeping items. If you have questions, and certainly welcome all the questions, if you could put that in the Q&A box. There's a button at the bottom of the of your menu at the bottom there. That's so we can keep all the questions together in case we get any sort of lively chat. We may not, but if so, we don't want to lose your question. So if you could put that in the box at the bottom, and if you at the end of this presentation, if you could take our survey, we so appreciate that feedback. So you can help us improve and better deliver just relevant and timely topics. So thank you for both of those things. So to get started, it's my great pleasure to welcome two of our longtime partners of the Georgia Technology Authority to help us explain the impact of the ADA Title II update for web and mobile accessibility, and particularly how it impacts state agencies. So Stacey Peace is one of our speakers. She's the Georgia State ADA Coordinator, and Johan Rempel, he's the QA Manager with the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech. Our three organizations, we collaborate on a joint initiative called Access Georgia, which serves Georgia agencies with web and application accessibility evaluations, with technical assistance, with trainings, and webinars such as this one you're attending. So thank you both so much for sharing your time and knowledge with us today. Stacey, I will hand it over to you to further introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with everyone. As Jen stated, I am Stacey Peace, and I am the State ADA Coordinator for the state of Georgia. I have been with state of Georgia government for 18.5 years now, and I have served as the State ADA Coordinator since 2019. It's a pleasure to be with you again today, and I would like to introduce my colleague and my presentation co-presenter partner, Johan Rempel.
Thank you so much, Stacey. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invite, Yen. So as Yen had mentioned, I'm the QA Manager at Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. I specifically focus on digital accessibility initiatives, ICT, information and communication technology, and then user experience. So ensuring that products and services are really benefiting people with disabilities and hearing directly from them with input from individuals with disabilities. So I'll go ahead and provide our agenda for today. First off, we're going to provide an overview of Title II updates and the new requirements. We're going to cover conformance timelines, and then a description of WCAG. Some of you may be familiar with WCAG, some of you may not be. We'll go into a little bit of detail with that, and then the POUR principles of WCAG, also known as the POUR principles. We'll go into that a bit. The relevance of WCAG 2.1 level AA in context, and then an overview of follow-up resources, and then a Q&A at the very end. So, brief overview of Access GA. This is a project that I'm very proud of to work with Stacey Peace and her team, and Yen and Georgia Technology Authority over the years. This has been in place since 2012, so it's 12 years now. Access GA, it's a collaborative project of the State ADA Coordinator's Office, the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission, also known as GSFIC, Georgia Technology Authority, or GTA, and then Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation here at Georgia Tech. And Access GA's purpose is to support state of Georgia agencies with information and communication technology accessibility, also known as ICT accessibility, promoting equal and timely access for employees and customers with a wide range of disabilities. And we're going to be providing the link to the Access GA resources near the very end. Over the years, we've served upwards of 45 plus state agencies within Georgia. So very proud of the work that we've accomplished through the ADA Coordinator's Office and Georgia Technology Authority. A little bit about Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. We are housed within the College of Design at Georgia Tech. Very briefly, these are some of the services we offer. We provide related to digital accessibility, web and mobile. We provide evaluations, technical assistance, customer support, and comprehensive accessibility evaluations and remediation solutions. We also have one of the largest Braille production teams in the country. We produce customized print and electronic projects of text and graphics. In the past, we've done work with the CDC, for example, to make sure that COVID-19 materials are accessible. We also have sizable contracts with the National Library Services. Captioning and described audio services. Really the aim of this is to make audio environments and visual media fully accessible via audio description services, closed captions, open captions, live captions. And then we have an entire e-text department that provide high quality e-text remediation for documents. And some of those include PDF, Doc, DAISY, HTML, PowerPoint. And then every state in the country has an AT Act, an Assistive Technology Act. That within the state of Georgia is housed within Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, and it's referred to as Tools for Life. It's an on-site, and they provide on-site and remote consultations, demonstrations, training, and follow-up technical assistance. And then as a research institute, we have ongoing disability-related research initiatives. We have several research scientists on staff that inform practice and service provisions through research. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to Stacey.
Thank you, Johan. So I'm going to share a little bit about the State ADA Coordinator's Office. Our office's mission is to provide comprehensive educational and technical support for state agencies so that those programs, services, and activities operated by the state of Georgia are accessible and usable by everyone. This is done via the provision of technical guidance, training, our annual ADA conference, helpful resources, our quarterly e-newsletter, which is entitled the ADA Informer, and collaborative partnerships like Access Georgia and the Georgia Emergency Preparedness Coalition for Individuals with Disabilities and Older Adults. I do want to stress that the federal agencies responsible for enforcing the various titles of the ADA are the U.S. Department of Justice, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the U.S. Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Federal Communications Commission, and the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. I stress that because I want everyone to know that our office is not an enforcement entity. The enforcement powers lie with federal agencies, the ones I just listed. So we cannot compel another entity to perform a particular action or to cease performing a particular action. Therefore, I want to encourage everyone, if you have any questions or concerns or about your agency's compliance with the ADA, please do not hesitate to reach out to our office for assistance. We are here to help, and our first priority is to assist state of Georgia agencies and not to admonish them. So we're here to help. Don't worry about sharing things with us that may not be the best thing that you've ever shared about your agency. It's okay. We're here to assist. Next slide, please. So we're going to take a quick look back at the Americans with Disabilities Act. Next slide. So the ADA was signed into law in July of 1990 by then President George H.W. Bush. And this was just a mere few months before the World Wide Web became available to the public. So at the time that the ADA was constructed and signed, we really could not, the founders could not predict, no one could really predict that the digital revolution was on the horizon. And the ADA has sporadically applied to online content since its signing with terms such as places of reasonable accommodation. And this is the first time in the history of the ADA, and we just celebrated the 34th anniversary of the ADA this past July, that there is a specific technical standard for web and mobile accessibility. And so we're very excited about these standards. It's going to make things a lot easier. It's going to be a lot clearer to individuals as to what their rights are under the ADA, and it's going to make very clear to agencies and entities what their obligations are. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about Title II of the ADA, the new rule, and how they both apply to state and local government entities. Next slide. So we talked about when the ADA was signed, and we're going to now talk about who does the Title II of the ADA apply to. So it applies to all state and local governments, and this includes agencies and departments of state and local governments, as well as special purpose districts, which could be like Amtrak or other commuter authorities. State and local government agencies that contract with entities to provide public services for them also have to make sure that their contractors follow Title II of the ADA. So for example, a nonprofit organization that runs a drug treatment program on behalf of that state agency, the state agency is going to need to make sure that that nonprofit program is following the requirements of the ADA. And this is not limited, the Title II is not limited to just state agencies and local government offices. It also extends to public schools, community colleges, universities, states, local courts, public libraries, and public transit agencies. Next slide, please. On April 9th, 2024, the Department of Justice, or the DOJ for short, announced the new final ADA rules on web content and mobile applications. The rules were published in the Federal Register on April 24th of 2024, and they took effect 60 days after the publication. So that was June 24th of 2024. This significant change requires a coordinated effort by all public entities to ensure the accessibility of their information and communication technology. Also, please note that recipients of federal funding covered by 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which can apply to some institutions of higher learning, some higher ed institutions, and some local and state entities also now have the same requirements applied to them. Next slide, please. The basic rules of the final rule are as follows. Public entities are required to ensure that both the web content and mobile apps that the public entity provides or makes available, either directly or through contractual licensing or other arrangements, is readily accessible to and usable by persons with disabilities. So how is this achieved? This is achieved in part by complying with a specific standard of level AA success criteria and conformance requirements as outlined in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG 2.1. For large public entities with a total population of 50,000 or more, have 2 years to meet this standard. So from the June 24th of 2024 date that, from the April 24th of 2024 date, you have 2 years to meet the standard. For small public entities with total populations of 50,000 or less, or what they call, or special districts, they have 3 years to meet this standard. So that would be 2027 versus 2026. Public entities must meet this standard unless they can demonstrate that compliance with the rule would result in a fundamental alteration in the nature of the service, program, or activity, or it would result in an undue financial and or administrative burden. Now, please note, an undue financial administrative burden, that threshold is a very high threshold to meet. And if your agency or entity is going to determine that something is going to be an undue financial administrative burden, this determination needs to be made at the highest level of the entity's leadership structure. So there shouldn't be a frontline office manager kind of making that decision. It needs to be at the very top of the agency that makes that decision. I also want to share a little bit more regarding special districts. A special district government is a public entity other than a county, municipality, township, or independent school district allowed by state law to provide one function or a limited number of designated functions with enough independence to be a separate government. Special districts do not have populations calculated by the United States Census Bureau. Special districts governments include, for example, a mosquito abatement district, a utility district, a transit authority, a water or sewer board, a zoning district, or a similar state or local government entity that has a specific function. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about responsibilities of state and local government entities when they're dealing with a third-party vendor. State and local entities cannot contract away their responsibilities under the new final rule. Therefore, state and local government entities are responsible for third parties acting on their behalf as they carry out the entity's programs, services, and activities. These include actions carried out by contractors or vendors, any actions that were created by a public or private partnership, whether it be a formal or informal partnership, and volunteers, whether it's individuals or groups. So this may require working with your contractors and your vendors or your volunteers or whoever to help ensure they understand these requirements, okay? And you make sure that if you're seeking out a contractor or a vendor to provide something that they have an understanding of the requirements. For example, if a state entity hires an outside web developer to design and build the entity's website, the entity needs to make sure that the web developer's design complies with the web content and the mobile app accessibility requirements under the ADA. So this is where your procurement department is really important. You're going to make sure that those contracts cover this, have this kind of language in it, so that you make sure that when you're contracting with someone or an entity or a vendor, that whatever services are provided are going to meet these new requirements, and that they understand what these requirements are. Next slide, please. So we talked about websites, and then we also going to talk a little bit more about mobile apps. So as I stated previously, the new final rule does cover mobile apps created by or used by public entities, whether they are developed, owned, and operated by the public entity, or whether or not a third party, like a private company, is the partner that actually develops or operates the app. This means that when it comes to external apps, public entities will want to ensure that their purchasing contracts, as I said before, your procurement department is important, with private companies ensure compliance with this new final rule, so that the program, services, and activities of the public entity provides via the apps are accessible. So not only when it comes to your website or contracts or other things that you may be doing that involve information communication technology, not only do those contracts need to make sure that you're stating that they understand what the new final rule and they're going to meet those requirements, but you also want to make sure that any contracts regarding any companies that you're working with through your mobile apps have those same contractual language included. Some examples may be external mobile apps designed to register to vote or to manage your driver's license. Next slide, please. Now, the federal government did build in 5 exceptions to the new final rule, and I'm going to go over them briefly. They have a lot of different criteria for each one, so you're going to want to go read the final rule to see all the specifics, but I'm going to touch on them and because we have a short amount of time today, so I'm going to touch on each one of them. So there are, as I said, there are 5. So the first one is archived web content. This includes content that is not currently used. This information may be outdated, not needed, or repeated somewhere else. And there are 4 different criteria that the content must meet to be deemed archived web content. So again, please read the final rule so you can read about the 4 different criteria, and it's all of the criteria. It's not 1 or 2, it's all 4 of those situations need to be met in order for them to be determined as archived web content. The second exception is pre-existing conventional electronic documents, and this includes word processing, presentation, PDF, or spreadsheet files that are also available on the Title II entity's website or mobile app before the date the Title II entity must comply with the rule. Unless such documents are currently used to apply for, gain access to, or participate in the public entity's services, programs, and activities. The third exception is content posted by a third party. Third parties are defined as members of the public or others who are not controlled by or acting on behalf of the Title II entity. So this does not include those people that you're contracting with. However, this exception does not apply if the third party is posted due to contractual, licensing, or other arrangements with the Title II entity. Excuse me. The fourth exception is conventional electronic documents that are about a specific individual, their property, or their account, and that are also password protected or otherwise secured. There are three criteria items that be met to meet this exception. And those three criteria items are: the documents are word processing, presentation, PDF, or spreadsheet files, and the documents are about a specific person or property or account, and again, the documents are password protected or otherwise secured. So please note, when you have the criteria, it's not an or, it's always an and. All of these items have to be met in order for them to fall into an exception. And the last exception is pre-existing social media posts. So social media posts that are made by a Title II entity before the date the entity must comply with this rule do not need to meet the standard. The rationale here is that meeting the standard may be difficult to do, and additionally, social media posts are usually intended to provide updates about things happening at the time that they were posted in the past. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Johan, who's going to discuss more in depth about web content and mobile apps.
Great. Thanks so much, Stacey. So let's put some clear definitions to what web and mobile mean here. So web content, this means the information and sensory experience to be communicated to the user by means of a user agent, for example, a web browser, including code or markup that defines the content structure, presentation, and interactions. So it includes things like text, images, sounds, videos, controls, animations, and conventional electronic documents. And then mobile apps. So this means software applications that are downloaded and designed to run on mobile devices, such as smartphones and tablets. So this can be expanded to include native apps, hybrid apps, or web-based apps. Native apps are the ones that we're all probably most familiar with. You download from the Apple Store or Google Store, and it's a fully functional native app that runs on your phone. The hybrid is a combination of when you can click a hyperlink, for instance, and that launches you onto an actual website. And then the web-based app are simply it's simply a shell that allows you to access the internet through the app itself. All three of those are needing to be compliant with Title II. And then Stacey already touched on WCAG 2.1. So in the context of this webinar, we have limited time, but we'll go over a little bit of what WCAG is for those who are unfamiliar. WCAG 2.1 refers to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's a W3C recommendation. That's a World Wide Web Consortium recommendation. And WCAG 2.1 was pushed out and finalized in June of 2018. So it's been around for a few years. And then WCAG 2.1 is incorporated by reference in the rule. It is not in the rule itself, but as Stacey referenced, this is the first time that the ADA has had a technical standard. So that technical standard is WCAG 2.1 level AA. So it includes criteria that provide web and mobile app accessibility to individuals with disabilities, This can include those with visual, auditory, physical, speech, cognitive, and neurological disabilities, and yet is feasible for public entities, web developers to implement. So Stacey talked about some of the exceptions, the 5 exceptions that she highlighted. And with the original NPRM, notice of proposed rulemaking, when this came out, it's interesting that this was dropped. So as Stacey mentioned, materials that are password protected that contain personal or sensitive information, those are exceptions. But what they changed since the NPR came out, due to some major pushback, was that password protected course content is no longer exempt. So that means that any course content materials that simply has a password to it is open to Title II requirements as well, because a lot of higher ed institutions and other organizations were simply password protecting their materials so they could get around this requirement. So that's a significant change. So under subpart H, password protected course content will be treated like any other content. Public educational institutions will generally need to ensure that content complies with WCAG 2.1 level AA. And this can also apply to Georgia Public Safety Training Centers, GPSTC, Georgia's premier training facility for all state and local public safety related units of government. This can include police officers, firefighters, 911 operators, coroners, emergency management officers, rescue officers, jail officers, and other emergency personnel. So you can see it's pretty broad in its application here. And then it also applies to the required training through the Learning Management System, or LMS, for content editors of websites hosted by GTA, Georgia Technology Authority. So let's talk a little bit about web content accessibility guidelines. Some of you may already be familiar with this, but for those of you who aren't, we'll provide a brief overview. Now, this does get fairly complex fairly quickly. If you were to print out the entire document referencing WCAG, you'd have like over 3,000 pages. There's a lot. And a lot of those are just guidance on how to implement WCAG. But high-level overview, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are technical standards on web accessibility developed by the World Wide Web Consortium, and they're based on 4 guiding principles. Some of these are often called the POUR principles, or the POUR. So the first one is perceivable. What can a person perceive through their senses? So visually, does web content have sufficient color contrast for someone who might be low vision or blind, for instance, or low vision or colorblind? Can a screen reader, which is used by individuals who are blind to convert text and electronic materials into auditory format, can that be detected? Can that be read? So those are some examples of perceivable. Operable. Are digital assets accessible through the keyboard, for instance? And very often these peripheral devices that help so many people, switch devices, headborne devices, those can all ride on top of the keyboard user interface. So is it operable? Can a person actually access the content successfully, either through the keyboard or any peripheral or Bluetooth devices? The third one, understandable. This is somewhat self-explanatory, but is the material itself understandable? We had mentioned, WCAG really applies to individuals with learning and cognitive disabilities as well. So is it easily understandable for individuals? Is it laid out in a logical order? Is the tab order correct, for instance? And then robust. So really, WCAG should be device agnostic, which means that whether you're accessing it with a tablet, a mobile phone, desktop, laptop, is it going to respond accordingly to those different devices and platforms? That's what's meant by robust. And then high-level overview, these are some common barriers to lack of digital accessibility or ICT barriers. Individuals who are blind or low vision. Some examples of these barriers are images have no alt text, alternative text. That old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, if there are absolutely no words to that image, that really puts someone who's blind at an obvious disadvantage. Functional elements cannot be controlled with the keyboard, and low contrast for individuals who may be low vision or colorblind. And then for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, having audio without any transcript, or having multimedia like videos, YouTube videos, any other videos without captions or transcript. And then individuals with limited manual dexterity, clickable areas that are too small. If the individual has hand tremors, for instance, and they can't focus on a particular button or control, and have restrictive time limits as well. So for individuals with disabilities, sometimes with their assistive technology, with what it is, and maybe needing additional time, are time limits on specific portals or websites, are those time restricted? So just something to be conscious of there. Individuals with learning or cognitive disabilities, unstructured content with no visible headings, for instance, sections or topics, or unexpected actions such as a redirect when an element receives focus. So WCAG 2.1 updates, success criteria. It's really important to keep in mind that WCAG is backward compatible. And what I mean by that is, if you think of your Android or Apple phone, and you have, say, iOS 17 on your iPhone, and iOS 18 is going to be coming out in the coming weeks or months. When iOS 18 comes out, iOS 17 isn't completely irrelevant. It's not obsolete. It holds true to a certain degree with WCAG as well. So WCAG 2.2 is the latest version. It was released in October 2023. But was not included in the new rule. So the new rule, as we've said a few times here, is harmonized with WCAG 2.1. And so it's important to realize that just because WCAG 2.2 is out, that 2.1 to a large degree is all applicable, right? WCAG 2.1 added new success criteria from WCAG 2.0, and these include mobile accessibility, users with low vision, so being able to have responsive design so that a person can zoom it in. It's something that I do probably 30 to 50 times a day, zoom in items that are too small, and making sure that those are responsive and that they behave in a way that is both accessible and user-friendly. And then additional requirements for users with cognitive and learning disabilities as well. So we want you to walk away with some concrete steps and knowledge on how to tackle this, because it can be overwhelming, especially if your particular organization or agency has not embarked on the accessibility path at all. So create awareness of Title II for web and mobile accessibility internally. And this is certainly one of the ways to do that. I champion Georgia Technology Authority for having Stacey and I on and educating people more on what this Title II means. You don't all need to be programmers or developers, but having a basic knowledge of what's in Title II and what that means from a web and mobile accessibility standpoint, everybody really should have a basic understanding of that. So another starting point, and this isn't a linear list, these can all overlap to a certain degree. But another great starting point is taking inventory of your digital assets. This could be various apps. It could be various websites your organization hosts. It could be documents that are posted on your website or made available otherwise. And this, again, accessibility is not the responsibility of one particular unit or individual. This can involve legal, human resources, information technology. Clearly, your senior management needs to be involved with that digital asset inventory. And it can also include content creators and editors as well. Develop an accessibility roadmap. As Stacey had pointed out, now there's less than 2 years to comply if your population you're serving is 50,000 or more. And if it's less than 50,000, generally it's going to be just under 3 years. So mapping that out, what is that going to look like? And that may change iteratively as you continue down that path. Policy development and implementation. So having this in writing and making it policy, having an accessibility policy in place is going to be really critical so that you can point everyone to the same policy and standards that need to be followed. Disability awareness and accessibility training. So this really addresses the why. Accessibility is so much more than just a rudimentary or rote checkbox kind of approach. And getting that buy-in of why are we making this accessible? Creating that disability awareness that this really is benefiting people with disabilities. The truth of the matter is, at some point in our lives, the vast majority of us, if we live long enough, are going to have at least one disability or another. And so creating that why and that incentive of this isn't just to check a box, this is to level the playing field for people with disabilities so that everybody across the board, including ourselves, probably at one point in our lives or another, have access to the same content that everybody else does. And there may need to be some training involved with that as well. And then accessibility language requirements within your procurement process. Stacey touched on this. This is so crucial. So many state agencies and local governments contract out their work. You know, I get it. It's expensive to have a full-time IT staff on board, and sometimes it is just more convenient to contract it out. But as Stacey mentioned, you can't contract your way out of these responsibilities. So this is going to put added pressure on those third-party vendors, those companies that provide services to local and state governments to make sure that they are compliant. And plan for future sustainability. This isn't a quick one-off. This isn't a quick, easy fix. The goal here is to make sure that you're compliant within that 2 to 3 year window, but you want to stay compliant. You want to build this into the culture of your organization. You want to build this into your workflow so that it's not an expensive and timely retrofit when you have to go back and visit the level of accessibility. And then most important, keep in mind, accessibility is a journey. It's not a final destination. Think of it as, security bugs or security fixes. It's not a one-shot deal. It's a continual effort, and there is no perfect. There is no website or mobile app that stays 100% accessible at all times, right? It's about a good faith effort and making sure that you're doing your very best to make it as accessible as possible, and building in those quality control measurements as well along the way so that you have a good understanding of what the current state is of your digital assets and what they should be. So quick overview here. Do I need a new website? So this is a question that quickly comes up. Is your current state of your website? So websites meeting WCAG 2.0, and just to back up a bit, WCAG 2.0 is what Section 508 is harmonized with. Section 508 is a federal standard for federal governments, and that seems to have been the baseline for many years, WCAG 2.0. But keep in mind, WCAG 2.0 usually only needs minor adjustments to meet WCAG 2.1. The state offers a web publishing platform that meets WCAG 2.1 and a site performance monitoring tool that measures compliance with accessibility. So Yen and her team have put a lot of energy into several Drupal templates that are highly accessible. And this is an initiative that Access GA was involved with in previous years to do some of that testing and making sure that at least the content management system you're working with can be as accessible as possible. So you're dealing more with the content that's going into that CMS or content management system. So questions to ask: are user interface components like buttons hard to see? It's something that anybody can really monitor. You don't need to be an IT specialist or an accessibility specialist. Do I need to scroll horizontally when I zoom in using my browser window? This is another quick example. When you're zooming in with the Firefox or Chrome browser, do you have that scroll bar on the bottom that you have to navigate through? That's really problematic for individuals who are low vision. Have I used autocomplete for form inputs? So that could be problematic as well, where it automatically fills out forms, and a person needs to go back and verify that. And then are error messages using appropriate roles? So if you have a pop-up modal or dialog box, is that accessible? Is an individual going to be able to access that successfully? So just some concrete examples to refer to. And this is, in my opinion, this is one of the most important slides. Is the Department of Justice, they don't require, but they recommend that public entities seek and incorporate feedback from individuals with disabilities on their web content and mobile apps. At the end of the day, this is about leveling the playing field for people with disabilities. And if we're not having conversations with individuals with disabilities, if we're not learning from them and learning what works, what doesn't, how can we tweak this, how can we change this, then we're only fulfilling part of our mission of that checkbox approach of making it WCAG compliant, right? It is so important to have people with disabilities at the table. Working alongside and collecting feedback from individuals of various types of disabilities provides greater assurance of a more optimal, inclusive, and accessible experience for everyone. There are countless examples of where making materials accessible for individuals with disabilities benefits everyone across the board. So we have several resources that you can follow up on. The first one is the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative. They have some great resources. For example, they have some video perspectives, short 2 to 3 minute videos that help you better understand the needs of individuals with disabilities. What's new in WCAG 2.1? A lot of resources there. And then a small entity compliance guide for new rule for Title II, an invaluable resource for your organization. It's a fact sheet on the new rule on the accessibility of web content and mobile apps. Stacey and I have just scratched the surface, really. So these are great resources for y'all to follow up on. And then the final rule. This is a pretty lengthy report, accessibility of web information and services of state and local government entities. So this goes really into the weeds with a lot of what Stacey had referred to. Link here to Georgia Technology Authority, link for the State ADA Coordinator's Office. I also added a link to Access GA. This is a great resource. We have a lot of archived webinars on creating accessible documents, the procurement process, individuals with disabilities, firsthand experiences, and then a link to Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. And then here's our contact information, the State ADA Coordinator's Office, phone number and email and website listed, as well as the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, also known as CIDI, our phone number, email, and website. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Yen.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to close up with just some real quick things that GTA can help with. And as mentioned on a few slides back, Johan talked about our state web publishing platform we call GovHub. That meets WCAG 2.1 requirements. And I know a lot of you in the audience are on the GovHub. And if you're not and you're interested, please contact us, and we're glad to talk to you more about that. We also have a design system that's for if you have like a mobile app and you want to get that, spun up quickly, but also in compliance with WCAG 2.1 requirements. That's available, and we can share that link out with everyone too in a follow-up email. We also have the tool that is that site performance monitoring tool that measures not just the compliance with accessibility, but also content quality and SEO. And that's available to all state organizations. That just give us contact us. That you can see our support desk. That's a great way to get in touch with us with any type of assistance you might need. And our site, we have resources. I see there's a request for any testing tools in the chat. On our site in the resources page, we have a bunch of tools to just help check accessibility, especially if you just need like a one-off. There's tools on that site. So, but yeah, definitely any of this, please definitely let us give us a shout out at our support desk. I see there's a question about getting a copy of slides. I believe we can at least share the resources page that Johan had showed and this too, but if not, the entire deck. So we can get some of that out to y'all. I just wanted to actually had a question to Stacey and Johan about the standards, the deadline that in 2 or 3 years is coming up. The number that was said was 50,000 population. That was the dividing line. What does that population like? How should the organization measure their population to determine that cutoff?
If you are a state of Georgia agency, then you are going to fall within that 2-year frame, because they're going to be looking at it's not just your one little agency as a standalone unit, and we don't have 50,000 people. We have more than 50,000 people in the state of Georgia.
Right.
Therefore, the state of Georgia is going to need to comply within 2 years.
Awesome.
So
Okay, yes.
if you're looking at, if you're a small town entity, then you're going to look at your town's, number of people that are in your town. But within the state of Georgia, we definitely have more than 50,000. And so we're looking at us as a collective whole. And so we're going to have to meet that 2-year requirement.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Stacey. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
And thank you both so much for taking the time to share all this information with us. I also appreciate everyone attending and just taking the time out of your day to learn more. We will definitely share, again, these resources, possibly the whole deck too. And also want to thank y'all just for, as a whole, like as Stacey and Johan had said, this is a joint effort. We all need to collaborate to make a more accessible Georgia. So yes, thank you for tuning in. And if anyone is interested in a future topic for GovChats, excuse me, we'll try to hold these monthly, and we'd love to chat with you. So we will. Also we have I'm sorry, one last thing. Our survey. I think we have a link that will be in the chat. If you could take that and let us know how this went for y'all today, and if there's any improvements that we can make. So yeah, hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much for attending.
Thanks for having us, Yen. This was a pleasure.
Thank you, Johan.
Yes, thank you very much. And
Stacey.
I see some questions in the chat, but I think you're going to be able to answer those when you share the deck with everybody,
Yes,
correct?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
Those will get shared.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.